hiring talent. This is the most important factor in whether you can succeed and scale up and sustain any business. And this presentation is about offering a model of how to succeed in attracting and hiring talent and keeping them stable. And it's based on the idea of trying to match up the expectations of the organization and the talented candidate or employee. The principal problems that companies and other organizations experience with hiring talent usually stem initially from the unrealistic aims. They're aiming to hire somebody who doesn't exist, essentially. They're trying to have their cake and eat it. They're trying to have somebody who is really awesome, really cheap, and these two things don't go together. And if organizations recognize the need to balance between either really experienced or really cheap, or somebody really creative, or somebody really safe and within the controls of their management, it's very often unclear what the priority is, and recruiters who help companies attract talent will often do a lot of work here to try to help employers understand exactly what their priorities are. And when they cannot successfully make a decision about hiring talent, it's often attributable to this lack of priority about what exactly they're looking for first. Now, what this presentation is really about is making sure that the employer and the employee's expectations match up. And so mismatching aims, I think, is the key reason why companies can't hire the talent that they're dreaming of. And it's mismatching in the sense that the priorities and expectations of the employee are not exactly the same as the priorities of the company. And we'll look at that in more detail in the next slide. Another thing I want to illustrate with this short presentation is about the need to think beyond money and beyond the basic facts of a resume, because we know that you want to hire somebody who is qualified and experienced enough and skilled enough to do what you want them to do in the company, and you know that there's going to be a critical money factor to it. But what are the other dimensions about attracting the right person, and what are the other things that motivate the candidates in order to attract them to your job? So we're going to look at those other dimensions. And don't overlook the need to make sure within your own management team that everyone is in agreement about what the main point of this job is, what's the priority aim for this person that you're intending to hire. And very often recruiters will get frustrated because a company can't make a decision, or candidates who are potentially quite good will be rejected or timed out because of some unspoken disagreement between the management influences in a company. And so it's very important to figure out what the dimensions are that you're trying to look for in your talent, and what are the priorities out of those dimensions. And again, this presentation is intending to help provide a simplified model so that you can avoid this unspoken disagreement among the people who are making the decision. And finally, what I want to try to illustrate is that if you try to have your cake and eat it, either from the point of view of asking for unrealistic combinations of things in the talent that you're hiring, or from the employee's point of view, you sacrifice the things that you're really motivated by, then this results in a compromise where you may succeed in hiring somebody, but it's unstable. You can't keep them stable in the position or inside the company. And there's really no point in hiring talent if you can't keep them reasonably stable. So this is what the presentation is about. And the basic idea that I'm suggesting here is that the interests of the employer are very often directly in opposition to the interests of the employee. And this is not unhealthy, this is just natural. So I'm just going to quickly illustrate what I think the main motivators of an employer are when the business or the organization goes out to hire somebody. First of all, depending on the scale of the position or the type of specialism that you're looking for, ideally you want somebody, what I term a miracle worker. You want somebody who is going to solve problems for you without you having to really teach them how to do it. And you want somebody who is going to take responsibility so that they don't add burden to your management team, they take burden off you and solve things, hit the ground running, ideally. And so this boils down to leadership, especially, of course, for management positions, and initiative. You need somebody who isn't going to need to be told exactly what to do in everything, but who can just get on with it and solve those problems that you're looking at. So that's the first interest of an employer. The second interest is they want somebody who is a true believer. They want somebody who drinks the Kool-Aid, who really understands and agrees with the vision of the company, who integrates with the company style and culture. And because of this, you want somebody who is going to be kind of safe to integrate inside your company, and you want to make sure that they're not a kind of rocking the boat kind of person. You want to make sure that they are going to fit with your existing team, and that in the job they're going to be reliable and dependable. And I think this boils down to two main factors, which is that you want them to be dedicated, which is you want them to give as much of their time as possible to your company, including perhaps overtime, and not disappear off on holidays or sick leave. And you want somebody who is loyal, in the sense that they're actually internally motivated to be working on the best interests of your organization. And thirdly, an employer, of course, wants a return on investment. A company wants to make sure that they are not paying too much for the salary and other compensation of the person, and this needs to be appropriate for the scale of the company. Obviously, a small startup can't buy the world's most awesome global talent, and you've got to think of the scale of the role as well. You might want somebody very awesome, but if you're putting them in a management position without sufficient resources or team scale, then it's not really appropriate to the sort of seniority or experience or cost of the person that you're hiring. So you've got to make sure it matches the scale, and in general you're looking for somebody who is a bargain, sort of cheap for what you're getting, and importantly, you want that person to be undemanding. You don't want that person constantly to keep coming back asking for more money or bargaining about their compensation. You want it to be kind of a done deal. So those are the three areas I think employers tend to be looking at, apart from the basics of whether the person is qualified to do the job. And I just want to contrast that with what the employee, the candidates, the individual, the person that you're hiring, what do they want? Well, first of all, I think employees are deeply motivated by the safety of a job, and by this I mean the personal sense of risk involved in whether they can deliver what's expected. So an employee wants reasonable expectations, and this comes, I think, from empowerment and mandate. And by this I mean they have been given the position and authority to do what is expected. They've been given the resources, human resources, budgets, equipment, tools, software to do what they're supposed to be doing, and they've got a mandate. It's pretty clear what the goals are, why, what the deadlines are, what the budgets are, as I mentioned. So it's clear within reason what they're supposed to be getting on with, and it's clear when they're successful, and what they're being expected to take responsibility for is not something which makes them afraid that they can't deliver it. So that, you can see already, slightly is in opposition with the employer's dream that talent is going to be miracle working, that you don't need to worry about specifying everything. You just slot that person in and they just really do an awesome job and solve everything, and you can put full pressure and responsibility on, and that person just delivers cool results. That's in opposition with an employee's innate need for some kind of boundaries and definition of expectations so they can try to decide whether they can achieve it before committing themselves to take responsibility. The second area is that employee, as is now more widely recognized, is very we're all very motivated by a sense of self-respect, of autonomy, of mastery, and a lot of that also comes from a sense of balance, about whether we're getting the freedom to express ourselves, about whether we feel respected, whether we can integrate the job with the rest of our life, with our interests and free time and hobbies, family, of course. And so that freedom and self-respect is really important, and that is in tension with the employer side, where ideally the employer would like you to be so dedicated and loyal that you sleep in the office and never go home to your family and never have any hobbies or free time. And if you do things like fitness, it's only so that you don't take sick leave. You know what I mean? So there's obviously extremes here, which are, I'm characterizing extremes to try to create a simplified model. But you can see there's a certain tension there about the employee's desire for freedom and self-respect and the employer's desire to have somebody who is essentially a minion. And thirdly, employees, of course, have got to think about money. Beyond the literal amount of money which is needed for them to pay their bills, employees have got to be influenced by what I call the gravitational effect of money. The gravitational attraction of money and other compensation is, first of all, to pull them away from the orbit of some other company. You've got to attract them from whatever they're doing now to come and wrench themselves away and come to you. That takes a big gravitational pull. Secondly, you've got to have not only a gravitational pull to pull them away from their existing job, but you've got to have a gravitational pull to keep them away from that sense of opportunity cost. A talented, highly skilled expert person, or management career leader, these people are going to be very aware of the fact that they could be doing something more awesome and more self-actualizing with their time and energy. And so is your compensation enough to stop them thinking what else they could be doing? And thirdly, is it enough to make sure that they can't be headhunted and stolen by some competitor next week? So that's the importance of gravitational effect of money. An employee needs to be not just fairly but generously compensated, and importantly, they need to be incentivized for growth, so that when they contribute to the growth and evolution of the company and they can see that you're making more profit, they've got a reason to keep on growing you, because they're also going to get a growth in that compensation. And that, of course, is in tension with the employer's desire to have something that's cheap and not constantly have to keep revisiting your compensation whenever you do a good job. You don't want to have to reward your employee for every good thing they do. That's ridiculous. But on the employee side, you certainly wouldn't mind that. So what I'm trying to suggest there is that there's a fundamental psychological tension between the interests of the employer and the employee. And I'm going to move on now to look at these three areas for the employer and try to consider what's realistic for them to go out and look for. So I've arranged these three key areas in triangle. We've got leadership and initiative, where you want that miracle worker who's going to hit the ground running and take your problems off you and do cool stuff without you having to tell them exactly what to do or how to do it. You want a dedicated and loyal Kool-Aid drinker who's really going to sing the company theme tune. And you want somebody who is a real cheap bargain and not going to keep coming asking for more money, because it's got to be appropriate to the scale of the company. And you're supposed to be making a return on investment by exploiting, leveraging these awesome bits of talent and making money for the shareholders, not primarily making money for the employees. So those are the three main points of performance, you can say, for an employer going out and looking for talent. Now, what I'm suggesting here is that an employer can only pick two. It's, I think, impossible for an employer realistically to have strong success in all three of these things at the same time. And if you try to get all of them, you're just going to get frustrated trying to find that dream person that doesn't exist. And so what does it mean to pick two? Well, it means that you have to choose one of the following three models for the talent that you're looking for. The most conventional model is that you seek a high salaried senior manager, or you could say perhaps senior expert if it's a specialist position. In this area, you want somebody with high amount of initiative, without big training and supervision needs, and you want them to be somebody who is basically incentivized by the compensation to be really dedicated with all of the time and energy to your brand, and to be loyal to you and stick with you because you've got the high gravitation compensation. So you've picked two, you sacrifice one, which is they're not cheap anymore, they're damn expensive. So that's a common model. The second model is where you cannot afford a high salary, but you really need that dedication and loyalty, and so you go out for somebody who is motivated by the experience and training and non-financial rewards that you're giving them, and this tends to characterize itself as a kind of management trainee, or fast track loyal staff member, a kind of protege often, but obviously what you sacrifice there is you've sacrificed the ability to hit the ground running. It tends to be a younger person or somebody without that established track record. They may be very skilled, maybe very, very talented, but they haven't got the proven track record to command a high price, and they're not going to hit the ground running and go straight into a leadership position or solve all of your problems. You're going to have to do a lot of hand-holding and co-working to help that person be effective. So you sacrifice the leadership and initiative in order to get somebody who's cheap and loyal. And the third model, which is the most unusual of them really, but perhaps seen a little bit more in small companies or companies which are deliberately trying to inject some originality, is where you have sacrificed the dedication and loyalty. So you get an outside person, perhaps a consultant or drive-by manager, a temporary placeholder manager, and you are looking there for somebody with a high degree of experience and expertise and leadership, inspirational in terms of what they can do for the company. Often they're a creator, and these people will hopefully be more affordable than the equivalent full-time salaried manager, because you are not buying their full-time, and then you're not buying them as a signed up contracted full-time employee. You're probably buying them as a consultant or freelancer or part-time manager or temporary manager or project manager. So you've sacrificed that loyalty and stability, and you've probably also got the opposite of that. You've got a bit of a disruptive influence, because they're not drinking the Kool-Aid, they're not inside your walled garden. You've got people who are going to bring in their external point of view and shake things up, and this is the model that you go for if that's what you really want. And of course it might not be that cheap, but the idea is that it's significantly cheaper than trying to find somebody who's a full-time manager, and it might be disruptive. So that's the first thing to say there. I think employers need to pick only two major emphases and agree which one they're willing to compromise on to a certain extent. And if that's clear, it's going to be much more easy to understand what kind of person to go out and advertise for, and how to evaluate people given to you by a recruiter or your interviewees. So now let's move on to look at this employee's point of view, the talent, the job candidate. We've got there 3 points of the triangle, which are the kind of diametric opposite of what the employer wants. So the employee, the talent, they want empowerment and they want a mandate, so that they've got a kind of risk-free sense of what's expected of them and how to do it. You have got people who want that sense of mastery and autonomy, and of course people need that compensation to make it worth coming to you and worth sticking with you without worrying whether they should be doing something more cool with their lives. Now for the employer, we said that basically they had to pick two and compromise on one. That one which the employer is compromising on, that's what the employee has to pick. So the employee only gets to pick one. Because as the employee, you're ultimately the weaker partner in this transaction. You are, by definition, an employee-employer relationship, the kind of labor for hire. However, you want to pretend that that's not the case, that is. And you've got to pick one of these 3 points as your model. So if you are primarily motivated by a sense of having a safe, clear directive of what your job is, a position, a job title, a desk, an office, a team, organizational structure, people answering to you, a contract, everything predictable and laid out where you can really deliver what is there because you know what you're supposed to deliver, then I think at best your vision is of yourself as a kind of career suit. You envision yourself with a cool company car and in the C-suite, and that's your point of success. And clearly you've sacrificed the ability to have an unlimited growth in your compensation, because employees never have unlimited growth, they're always on a scale, and you've sacrificed your own time and flexibility and freedoms. So, and at worst, of course, that means that you're going to find yourself just as a sad salary man, salary woman, because you have opted for safety and predictability over attractive rewards and over personal freedoms. And that is probably the most common model which employees fall into. Kind of opposed to that is the people who choose freedom over compensation and power and position. And so in the best case scenario, these are people who earn respect and recognition as kind of ninjas, as like cool, free masters of what they do, and are really good at it, because they've exploited the kind of creativity, the creative space and freedom and self-direction. At worst, of course, this means that you have gone so much down the line of having autonomy for yourself that you can't integrate with hierarchical structures, and so that you find it difficult to integrate with groups or with bigger, more structured organizations, and of course you might be feeling rather penniless because you are unable to kind of command the predictability and loyalty and stability that is a prerequisite of traditional organizations paying you on a stable basis. And the third model that you have as an employee is where money and compensation is the driving factor, and again, contrasting the good and bad cases. The good case here is that you will be somebody who's sought after. Either you're headhunted as a top manager or top expert in your field, or you are able to command your price in the market because you are so awesome. But that will be at the expense of having a predictable, risk-free expectation. In fact, you have a very high expectation and high need to deliver, and you will be at the mercy of what people demand you to do. You can't pick your hours and name your price. And of course, on the negative side, this could mean that you feel like a sellout because your only principle is what you're being paid to do, and it can cause burnout as well because your time is less important and your freedom is less important. You just do what you're paid to do and try to get paid, compensated as well as possible. So that's obviously quite a common model for high achievers. So those are the three perhaps slightly cynical and slightly extreme models on which an employee has to view things. Now, an employee might not appreciate that kind of characterization, but from the candidate's point of view, it's quite useful for you at least to try to picture what that compromise area is, where you're least interested in it, and see if that can match the apparent compromise area of the employer. So if the employer is clearly not willing to pay a lot of money, and they are clearly expecting you to work miracles, then that means you've got to see if the flexibility point is there. Can you get that compromise on the idea of getting a bit more autonomy and bargain that? Or if you are going to be in a company where you are reasonably well paid and you're given the kind of autonomy that you're looking for, you've got to be aware that maybe the downside might be a lack of empowerment or lack of structure. So that just gives you a little bit of model to look at, and of course from the employer's point of view you can actually profile your candidate based on one of these three simplified extremes and use that to try to match your priorities for your pick 2. So it's just really food for thought there. What I've termed this as strategic choices in hiring talent. I think many companies don't really fully respect talent hiring as the key part of their strategy, and being strategic about hiring talent, and if you are being hired for your talent, being strategic about protecting your own interests, I think it ought to be better for everybody and lead to few of these kind of failures that are due to not getting the right talent and not retaining the right talent. So thank you very much for listening. KnowledgePower is a digital marketing strategy agency. We help with consultancy and implementing projects. My name is George Bailey, and you can contact me via the links in the footer below. Thank you very much for listening.